Oh, hey, fam, what is up, dude? You don't need more information. Coming from somebody that just really fucking loves taking in information and knowledge and stuff like that, but hey, dude, real quickly, I gotta take a sip of this matcha. I said in my last video that I've been cutting down on coffee, and I used to believe that matcha didn't hit, but it does. It really does. It's different than coffee. Like that first sip of coffee is just so fucking good. Um, but I haven't been wanting to do coffee lately, mostly because my body's been incredibly inflamed on the past few months, and been looking at my dietary choices and things that I'm doing, and um, coffee is incredibly acidic, so inflammation is just gonna go a little bit higher with coffee. But you know, it's not like the only thing contributing to that. That was definitely way overdoing sugar. Like eating 14 cookies in one sitting, kind of overdoing anything. But hey, it was the holiday season, baby. No, that's not an excuse. I was going through a lot of life changes, and I was incredibly anxious, and I was just numbing myself through food. But hey, we learn. We learned through the process. Man, I hadn't done those, like indulging in utilizing food as a soothing agent hadn't been something I had done since I was in high school. I'm 28 years old, and since when I was like 16, when I was like 14 to 16, maybe 14 to 17, probably like 14 to 16, I was really in a bad place with nutrition in the sense of um, not like an eating disorder, but just the binge starve cycle, just viciously, like basically eating nothing for a few weeks and then going ham and binging incredible amounts of food, like gorging myself, and then feeling really bad about it, and then starving and binging, and it went on for a long time. Um, so it was pretty chaotic, and 2025 definitely uh, it was just kind of a really turbulent year in the inner landscape, and a lot of that stuff resurfaced. And at first, I was incredibly thrown off because like, how the fuck is this coming in? But you know, this is a complete side tangent that has nothing to do with what I'm trying to talk about today. What I'm trying to talk about today, though, but hey, now we have a little bit of a familiarity. We know each other a little bit more. You know more of my insecurities. So, cheers to that. Um, the main thing that I wanted to discuss today is just this thought process of not needing more information. We need more integration and application. And I have been somebody that has consumed vast amounts of information, and having a head filled with information, but yet not taking applied action towards that information, um, often creates much more anxiety because you just have like it's literally the same as right now with social media, how we have vast amounts of information of all the things going on all over the world, but not necessarily all of the ways to apply some kind of action towards that. And it leaves people feeling far more unsettled within themselves. It's kind of like that saying on the inverse of this. It's like that saying, ignorance is bliss. If you don't really know something, you're kind of in this state of blissful ignorance. The lack of awareness will kind of create a little bit of a happier picture because less information, it hurts you to a degree, but then it also kind of keeps you in this little happy bubble. And how do we shift through excessive amounts of information that we have accumulating around ourselves right now is through taking action. And it's one thing to be constantly learning and reading and evolving, that's a great thing. But if there is no direct outlet to actually put that thing into motion, you are just going to be somebody who has a lot of heady information but very little embodied wisdom. And the last video that I made, this kind of is like a continuation of that because they work hand in hand from one another on taking in that action when it doesn't really feel right. And this isn't going to be a long video. That last one was like almost 30 minutes long. This one's only going to be a few minutes, and basically just a gentle reminder to take some action. And I I didn't take action on so many things for so long because I was afraid of it not being perfect, or I was um, just oversaturated with knowledge that I was like kind of paralyzed, paralysis by analysis. And the only way through that is just picking something and doing it. And then, I would get down on myself because I would see so many people just, you know, doing things. And in my head, I was watching people do things, and me not taking action on things was dwindling my self confidence. Because confidence, you can't think yourself into a state of confidence. This is like, it takes action. And this is a part with the spiritual community and the manifestation world that um, people don't, understand. Like when you listen to people like Abraham Hicks or, Secret of Life and stuff like that, it's not that information's wrong by any means. It's actually like phenomenal information, but I think what lacks is actually how we begin to place these things into motion, and how we place these things into motion is by putting ourselves into motion and allowing that motion to be messy. It's the same as when you're learning something, a new sport, a music ability, painting. Like, it's just a fucking mess in the beginning. And as you go on, you just kind of figure it out as you are stumbling upon the path. So, like, what knowledge do you have that you have not yet applied for yourself? What bits of information are in your periphery that are not being acted upon? And what can you do to actually just go do that? What is the smallest thing that I was listening to this one like YouTube short a long time ago, and this person was interviewing this lady, and this lady was a journalist, and she was talking about her writing endeavors and her writing books, and that she would have these huge pieces to work on, and sometimes she would just get so overwhelmed that like she wouldn't do it. But then she realized, like, if it just feels too overwhelming, it's too large to start with. And it's important to have the larger aim in like the scope of view of like knowing like, hey, we're headed to Zion, but fucking climbing this mountain is going to be a bitch. And if you just only think about how the fuck am I going to go from here to there, obviously that doesn't make sense. And this is an obvious thing, right? It's an obvious thing mentally when I'm saying this out loud, and when you're hearing this, like, yeah, you just take one step in front of the other. But again, when there is a mass accumulation of information, it makes the obvious not feel so fucking obvious. And then again, common sense is not too common anymore. And common sense is an interesting thing because what's common to one person is not necessarily common to the other. It's all based and dependent upon culture, family, life upbringing and experience, so common sense isn't really a fair way to approach that thing, so start small. What is the smallest thing that you can do for yourself? And then do that. And it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. You don't need to have a plan. I would wait and procrastinate and do all of the busy thing. Chris Williamson has this other post where I'm bringing up a lot of other people's information. Hey, head of information. But all these other, like, he would say, thinking about doing the thing isn't doing the thing. Planning to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Like, we could do all of these things surrounding actually doing the thing. And just doing the thing is actually doing the thing. And yeah, sometimes you might need to prepare yourself. If you're going to go fucking climb one of the 7 summits, you better understand, like, how you're going to do that and get the gear and pay a guide. But you're not actually going to climb one of the 7 summits until you actually put your boots on and get on the fucking trail and start humping. So that's it, my friends. Quick one. Well, it's been almost 10 minutes, but time flies when you're having fun. Much love.